Okay, cool. So this isn't necessarily new news. I think they might have announced this toward the end of June. So what, July, August, like 2 months ago. And yeah, whilst it's not necessarily new news, it's really it's a really interesting development for J Hus. So obviously J Hus, one of the UK's, most prominent voices in the scene. Everything he's ever released has just slapped. He's always delivered. Interesting character, to say the least. But really, yeah, there might be a little bit of stuff you hear here and there, sort of thing. But he's really not really been that sort of guy to really detract from his own music. He's not in the news for other things all the time. Yes, he's had his troubles, whatnot, but realistically speaking, generally speaking, he's been 10 for 10 on every single thing that he's released. His catalog speaks for itself. He started off with some really amazing freestyles on YouTube, GRM, all that sort of stuff, and then he hit us with what we would consider, I think there was a mixtape before the big album, right? So we go to his discography. So obviously Common Sense was 2017. Now Common Sense was kind of his breakout album. Did You See What I Done? All that stuff. It ended up landing in, I think it was top 10. I think it was number 6 or 5 in the UK charts. I think it was number 6. I think it just missed out on number 5. In the UK top 100 album chart, which, for J Hus as his debut album, someone coming from the scene, what an incredible feat, man. Like, what an incredible, amazing achievement. Platinum record, Yeah, that was 2017. I'm pretty sure there was an EP or a mixtape before that as well. If we look at J Hus's discography, so we've got, here we go. So we've got Playing Sports 2016, 15th Day 2015. I think that was Lean and Bop. And so 2017 Common Sense. Now, from my understanding, J Hus's albums were released through Sony Music or their imprint, which is Black Butter. So yeah, here we go. So we see the last 3 albums, his only 3 studio albums that he's released, excluding mixtapes, Black Butter. Now, for those of you who don't know, Black Butter is an imprint of Sony Music in the UK. There you go, founded in 2010, self-funded startup, and then there must have been an acquisition or an investment of some type from Sony Music at some point. If we search that. So in November 2014, Black Butter became a standalone entity alongside RCA Columbia and Sony CMG under Sony Music UK. So in a joint statement, Jason Eiley, most exciting label to have emerged in the last 5 years. It's a real coup for us. Right, cool. So they operate under Sony Music. Now, I don't think you can really say anything about Sony Music when it comes to J Hus's career. I think if anything, they've only ever helped develop what he's done. Obviously, I wasn't on the inside of that, and a lot of people obviously weren't. And so I think it's fair to say that they've really done a lot for J Hus in his career. And, going from that first album to where we are now with J Hus, so Common Sense, Big Conspiracy, and then a couple years ago now, it's crazy. I thought it feels like Beautiful and Brutal Yard was only last year, but it was 2 years ago. It's only got bigger and bigger. You can see here in the chart positions, number 6 for Common Sense, number 1 for Big Conspiracy, number 1 for Beautiful and Brutal Yard. Beautiful and Brutal Yard. That's a tongue twister, man. Interesting though, I didn't really notice this before, but the certifications, obviously there's more time passed with the older albums, obviously, clearly. So that's, for that to be platinum and then the second to be gold and the second to be silver. we'd have to look at the actual track, the sale numbers and all that stuff, and that's a whole nother thing. But potentially declining. But then you look at the popularity with regards to its performance in the OCC charts, 2 number 1 albums back to back, man. Like, you can't say anything about it. So overall, I think Sony has been nothing but a good thing for J Hus, for his career and everything that he's achieved thus far. There was one thing that I remember seeing, maybe I'm making it up, but I'm pretty sure I remember him years ago, Hus, posting an Instagram story calling out Black Butter for something. And for the life of me, I've searched it. There's nothing. Either they've wiped it off the internet completely. Something, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I saw something happen, or J Hus posting something about F Black Butter, F this, F that. But, from what I can see online, there's nothing, there was obviously the Kojo Funds beef and stuff, but that's not necessarily to do with the label. I'm pretty I don't know. Maybe let me know in the comments if you remember that, if you remember seeing an Instagram story of Hus sort of calling out his label, or I've got a feeling it might have been something to do with, if it did happen, I feel like it might have been something to do with the release of an album or a single, or there was a delay or something happened, right? So I'm not entirely sure what that was, but regardless, we put that aside. J Hus's career has been incredible so far, and it's been thanks to, in a big way, it's not only his management and all the teams around him, but also obviously the label, Sony. So that's him up until now. Now, 2 months ago, it was announced that J Hus has partnered with independent label Empire. So, if you guys don't know about Empire's one of the, I guess they'd be considered one of the leading sort of record label and distributors in the current market. They're founded by a guy in San Francisco. His name is Ghazi Shami, and yeah, there we go. So 2010, based in San Francisco, and I've watched a few interviews with Ghazi. He's a very passionate hip hop head. He, from San Francisco, based in San Francisco, and really switched on, really tech savvy, understands the market, understands the game, understand what's going on, and understood where he could fit into a market that wasn't necessarily struggling, but is becoming more and more saturated. And the returns on a popping single are a lot less than what they might have been years ago, right? So yeah, this guy, big hip hop head, really on it, and he's founded this company called Empire. It's now 15 years old now, so they've been going for a while, fully independent, have their own distribution deals with the major platforms. They're not being distributed by a major label. They're not going through a major label system. Fully independent, really cool company. From everything I've seen anyway, and the artists that they've worked with, yeah, they're really switched on. They're really on it. So that's Ghazi, and that's Empire. So J Hus has decided to partner with them, and this is a article that was pushed out a couple months ago on Music Week. Saying J Hus has announced he's partnered with the leading independent record label Empire, and obviously we all know the single Gold with Asake was released as sort of the mark and the symbol of this new era of J Hus. Speaking about the signing, the Empire COO, Nima Etminam, I don't want to say his name incorrectly, but so I'm just going to call him Nima. J Hus embodies everything Empire looks for in an international superstar. He's charismatic, hardworking, and an incredible performer. He blends sounds and cultures together. So this is really interesting here. So international superstar. And the reason that's interesting is because as proud as we are of UK music and culture in the scene, I don't know if you would consider J Hus an international superstar just yet, but that's where it's headed. Now, the reason that's where it's headed, and the reason this is so interesting, and the reason that if you take a step back and strategically look at it, is Empire. Empire, like I said, founded by Ghazi, hip hop head, but Empire is so, they've been so tapped in to the African market in recent years. And this is why it's so interesting. This is why this is an exciting move for J Hus. There's a lot of potential in this move for J Hus. Now, the reason is J Hus is signed to Empire, and Empire, for the last few years, have really been working their way and planting deep roots in and across Africa. They've opened up offices in Lagos, Nigeria. They've partnered with YBNL Nation. They've been behind some huge wins for some artists like Burna Boy, like Fireboy DML, Asake himself. And their roots in Africa are only sort of strengthening and growing even more and more. So, I'm pretty sure they opened up let's have a look. Africa label office. I'm pretty sure they opened it up in Nigeria a couple years ago. Where's the news tab at? What's that? There we go. Gumaro, yeah, he came from Universal, to be fair. Here we go. So Empire launches in Africa. So the move builds on Empire's launch a year ago of US-based arm focusing on North Africa and West Asia. I'm pretty sure he opened an office in Lagos. Let's Empire office, Lagos. Is this it? Here we go. I think this is it. There you go. 3 executive hires in Nigeria. So this is 2022, February 2022. Based in Lagos, Nigeria, they'll support Empire's roster of artists in music markets such as Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and the Ivory Coast. So this, alongside all the sort of artists and projects that they've already worked on, Empire are really embedded into that culture, and they are sort of, I guess you could say that the major labels obviously have a presence in pretty much every sort of market, every sort of geographical territory available for you to be able to market a record in. But I think with anything, like, as much as labels might benefit from economies of scale, I think obviously the bigger you are, the harder it is to see everything on a granular level. And I think a company like Empire, as they are big and they are growing exceptionally, I think that Empire is really in a strong position to master this demographic and this audience and this geography, for the music market. And so everything they've done in Africa, signing like someone like J Hus is really marrying the two cultures together. Like this, it's the taking of the UK rap and the sort of African and black music and the diaspora that exists in the UK, which is a very powerful market, and then taking it to Africa and vice versa. And we do need to talk about Africa, because Africa as a continent and as a market in the music industry is, number one, fully untapped. Not fully untapped, it's very untapped. And two, the growing rate of consumption is insane. Like, I think the only comparable market is potentially India, and that's probably most likely because of the population. Yes, culturally as well. Like, we've seen a lot of imported music from the subcontinent of India and South Asia in general. But Africa is incredibly exciting market. So if we look at some of the reports that have been coming out, interestingly enough, this came out a couple months ago, same time as they announced the J Hus deal, and that's just a what do you call it, man? That's just a coincidence. So to put it into perspective, so Afrobeats, this is 2024 streaming data. Afrobeats recorded a 28% increase in global listenership. Now you think 28% are, bro? 28% is a big percent. Like that's a big percent. You know, that's a huge amount of increase year on year. With 114% boom in consumption across Sub-Saharan Africa. 114% more consumption, more people listening to this sort of music across Africa as a whole. And I think there's a bunch of different elements for that. I think there's reasons for that. I think it's obviously increased access to technology and streaming platforms, an increased sort of middle class disposable income across the continent. I think there's a whole bunch of reasons, economic reasons for this to be the case. But the main thing is to consider is the music. Like this music, yes, Afrobeats has been around for a long time, but it's really beginning to have its moment. And so, you know, Empire really pushed into this market and understood that narrative, and they've grown it even more. And so global listeners spent over 1.1 million hours listening to Nigerian artists and created around 250 million playlists featuring them. So that's obviously just Nigeria. I've been talking about Africa as a whole, and I think it's fair to say Nigeria is probably one of the leading markets for this music, and you know, it's where some of the biggest artists are coming from. So, you know, Africa as a whole, really interesting continent, huge amount of potential. Empire are in there early-ish, and now they're gonna export J Hus there. So the first thing they do is bring J Hus on a track with Asake. So, you know, you have basically one of Nigeria's biggest, if not the biggest artist, linking up with one of the most respected and talented artists that the UK has to offer, which is J Hus. You know, what a link up, what an incredible start for his Empire journey. You know, nearly 4 million views on this video alone already. So I don't want to try and get copywritten, but you know, it's an incredible moment, incredible shift, incredible move for J Hus. You know, I think it's a very smart strategic move for him, and I can't see it going anywhere but a positive place for him. You know, I think there's so much potential growth here, and obviously that first track, that gold track, was incredible. I think they need to match it even more now. I think they've set the bar very high. That was a dope record, and they need to come even better now. So yeah, I think it's going to take him to a whole new level. I think you know, it's an interesting time for J Hus. But let me know what you guys think. I think, you know, like I said, I think Hus is in an impeccable space. I can't wait to hear what else he comes with now. I'm hoping for an album later this year, if not next year. And yeah, if you found this breakdown useful, insightful, hit the like button, drop some comments, let me know your thoughts about this move, let me know your thoughts about the African scene in general, about J Hus in general. If you do know what happened with him and Sony, yeah, anything you like, man. And yeah, I'd appreciate any feedback on this video. Let me know what you think. I feel like Hus is about to take over globally. Make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. Peace.